tonight's meeting of the Bennington County Regional Commission. We have a couple of interesting topics to cover tonight on public transportation and the new federal infrastructure bill, which I believe is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. If I look at my crib notes here. Before we get started with our presentations and discussions, I want to take care of some business. So we have, for the commissioners present, and I believe we have a majority of towns represented. For the commissioners present, we have the first thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our November 18th meeting. So if anyone of our commissioners would like to make a motion regarding approval.
I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Nancy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Bruce. Any discussion of the minutes? I'm kind of assuming the role of chair, as I don't think we have an active one right on the list at the moment. No, I don't hear any. If not, then all in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye or raise a virtual hand or do something.
Aye.
Thank you. And opposed, anyone? Not hearing any. Okay. Very good. So that item of business is done. Thank you very much. So I would like to, first of all, welcome our first speaker, who is Terrence White, the Executive Director of the Green Mountain Community Network, public transportation provider for Bennington County. Terrence has a relatively short presentation, and then we'll have some questions and answers for anyone who is so inclined. And then Chris Saunders is here from Senator Leahy's office to talk about the infrastructure bill. So let me just turn it over to Terrence, and I believe Callie is hosting. And if you have enabled screen share, Callie, then Terrence should be able to kick off his presentation. So welcome, Terrence.
Thank you very much, Jim, and good evening to everyone. First of all, Jim, thank you for the invitation to participate this evening and speaking to the group. As some of you may not know, I have been the new executive director for Green Mountain Community Network for the last 6 months. And prior to that, I spent the last 27 years in public safety and emergency management, working in law enforcement and also working in higher education. So I'm fairly new to transit as you know, in the broader scope of things, but I'm excited to participate in providing this exceptional service that we have here in Bennington County. For those of you who live in Bennington, I was also the safety director for Southern Vermont College when they were still operating. So I have been in Bennington for a number of years and serving in our law enforcement and in our higher ed institutions. And I'm very familiar with the transportation service of Bennington County. And when I was offered an opportunity to join this organization, I didn't look back, because I believe that the service that we provide here in Bennington County is still in the process, has grown and still in the process of growing. It is a service that is well needed for our residents for various reasons that I'm sure that some of you are aware. Let's see if I can pull up the presentation here. Just a second here. Can everyone see my screen? No?
Not yet, not
No.
yet.
Yeah.
Hold on just a second here. One second here. Just so you know, anytime, as soon as you want to present, you want to have technical difficulties, right? Let's see here.
Hand in hand.
Yes, sir. Just give me a second here.
And the degree of difficulty of the technicality is definitely related to whether the people watching are your bosses or not.
I agree. Let's try this again here.
That worked. We can see it.
That looks good.
Can everybody see now?
Yep, looks good, thanks.
All right, moving right along. Just as I was saying before, I've been the executive director here at Green Mountain Community Network for about 6 months. And in the 6 months, we've done some amazing things. But just to give you backdrop history of Green Mountain Community Network, for those who don't know, is a nonprofit organization. It was founded in 2007. It was an auspice from the American Red Cross, in which has safely and efficiently provided transportation services in around Bennington County since 1985. So there's a lot of history in terms of public transportation in Bennington. The goal is, how do we get to those residents who are in dire need of transportation? And through collaboration with other agencies, state organizations and federal organizations, we are in the process of looking at all of those components and how to bring transportation to small and rural communities. It's not without its challenges, as some of you know. Our board oversees, our volunteer board consists of 9 individuals. We also have an experienced management team, and we are partly funded by the state of Vermont transportation budget, the federal transportation transit administrative systems, and also Medicaid. And that is the same for most of our agencies. So we're very thankful for the funding. Green Mountain Express is a leading transportation alternative for our residents. As you know, it's the only transportation service right here in Bennington County. We're a full-time service transit provider, and we offer a variety of different services. For those of you who are familiar, currently, we offer deviated fixed routes, demand response, we medicate. We also are heavily involved in the E&D program, which is the elderly and disabled persons services. And then we also have a private pay service for our residents as well, which consists of approximately 85% of the service time is used mainly for fixed routes and demand response. That has been growing over a number of years. Just on the staffing levels, GMX is overseen by, just a second here, by myself, who is the executive director. We also have an operations manager as well. We have a business manager, safety and security manager on staff, dispatchers and schedulers, office administrative assistants, and also maintenance. And we have approximately 20 drivers now with 9 volunteer drivers. So when we think of the scope of who's providing the service here at Green Mountain, we have a dedicated staff who are trying to provide those exceptional services. Where do our buses go? For some of you guys that don't know, we have a variety of different line services, approximately 8, as some of you know, and we have designated those lines of service. And as far as color coding them, for example, our blue line mainly serves the Bennington hospital areas. Our red line serves Northside Drive, Coastal Drives, schools, shopping centers, also those who want to go to the park and recreational areas. So we provide a variety of different services that we're looking to also increase. The cool advantages of our buses is that all of our buses are equipped with bike racks. They have the ADA lift for wheelchair assistance. We also have a current updated comprehensive website that's interactive with our residents here in Bennington, so it allows them to go on to the site and navigate. That is very user friendly in terms of listing or trying to find the different services that they need. We also have a new transit app, and that transit app will allow residents and passengers who are at bus stops or even in their residence to be able to track their buses in real time to see in terms of the destinations and departure and arrival times. So that's a wonderful feature that was added this year. We also have deviations from fixed routes that allow us to transport on-demand services. We operate Monday through Friday. Saturday services, we have that available. Our drivers are pleasant and safe. And I'm not sure how many of you have had the opportunity to board one of our buses and to have that experience. One of the things I had the pleasure of doing is speaking to the Bennington Rotary and some other organizations. And as a member of the community and overseer of transportation, one of the things that really I was enlightened was that I thought that everyone in Bennington County knew about GMX in terms of the services they provide. And that's not entirely true. And I found that out in speaking to some of the residents, and then also speaking to other town managers and representatives, is that the message is really not out toward the broader residents in these rural areas. So my campaign is geared towards that, because we know that public transportation impacts rural and small towns, especially now. And then one of the things I looked at that was presented to me was by the American Public Transportation Association, and the number of rural and small towns public transit agencies such as GMX has increased over a decade or so. And I think about the other 8 providers in the state of Vermont and how they have grown, and we have grown as agencies 7.8% increase in total ridership. So there's a need, there's a demand for that. The goal is, how do we get that services out to those residents who really need it? The other thing was, older Americans make up a larger portion of rural population, at least 17% than an urban population. So when we look at the E&D program, the elderly program, and those individuals who need transportation services, whether it be grocery shopping, medical appointments, and one of the things is, how do we get to that broader community to provide those services? When I think about the veterans, there are about 2.9 million rural veterans, making up 33% of the veteran population in the VA healthcare system. You know, how about those individuals who need healthcare and need transportation services? So all of these components, we continue to try to strive and try to make comprehensive programs and schedules, and look at all of those things to provide those services. The other thing was, really quickly, is when I think about Bennington County and all the residents in public transportation, I think about those small communities outside of Bennington, your Cambridge, New York, your Hoosick Falls, and all of those different areas that residents are in need of transportation. And we know that transportation plays a critical role in the livability in our communities. The factors that influence our community is quality of life. Transportation allows for access to food, healthcare, education, opportunities, and employment. And we'll get into some of the other details a little later. Transportation also has the opportunity, is strongly linked to supporting the economic development and providing infrastructure of growth here in Bennington. So when I think about committees like BCRC and others, and all of these residents who are participating in these committees and having meetings and discussing with the federal agencies and state agencies, that shows that there is a need, and we are working together to try to make life better for our community, for all of the people in the community, our elders, the young people, and then also servants in those higher education institutions. We know that access to transportation increases residents' ability to access recreation, entertainment, places of worship, and other activities that promote community engagement. This is why transportation is essential. And we have individuals that are fighting desperately to make sure that we bring transportation to those that are in need. The other thing is, when I think about my 6 months here and some of the objectives that I have in terms of where are we going, what's the direction of Green Mountain Express, how we're going to grow, what do we need to do? Do we have the resources to do that? And I'm very pleased to say that GMX is fiscally sound. We're in a good position. We just need to include and reach for those residents that are in need of transportation. So working with the local hospitals and local agencies, child care, E&D programs, all of these programs are essential and vital to our community. My objectives for 2022 is to maintain and stay on course with our 5-year transit plan, which is growth and some of those things that in terms of growth that we're looking at, as you guys probably are aware, is that micro transit pilot programs are coming. We have ordered 2 electrical buses. So that's all part of our growth. One of the things I'm heavily involved in now is the increase in marketing and advertising to make sure that the services get to the people that are in need, and so they're aware that the service is available. Search for new transit revenue streams, grants, financial development, and opportunities. As you know, funding is always a challenge for any transit agency. So as the executive director, I try to get creative and look for ways to increase revenue for our organization. I look to upgrade, improve communications throughout Bennington and with the residents. Increase educational outreach programs to colleges and universities and those young students. And then also conducting community transportation assessments, meeting with counties and rural and villages such as Manchester, Rutland, and some of the other locations. The goal is to enhance local partnerships to overcome any barriers that have been up in the past in terms of whether it be financial or otherwise. The other objective is to enhance our use of technology, a better way to collaborate and coordinate to deliver services. Just a couple updates, and then I can hand it back over to Jim, or we can answer any questions you may have. Currently, new updates for GMX is that, as I said before, we have launched a new website that's user-friendly for our community in terms of navigating different services. We also have just received 2 new bus shelters. And those bus shelters, we look at trying to include a couple bus shelters every year and place them throughout Bennington. We have one bus shelter that's going to be going up at the Mace building. The other shelter will be up over by CVS and Aldi's for our residents who are waiting for transportation. And it's when we think about inclement weather, rain and snow and so forth, it protects our passengers as well. Staff required training and safety programs. I'm looking at ways to enhance professional development for the team to make sure that not only are we compliant with required training and programs, but also that, in order to provide the best service that we can, I want to make sure that our drivers and our staff is equipped and well trained. One of the immediate things that I will be doing in the next couple of weeks is that I will be engaged in a press release, and that's a tool that I'm using to make sure that the message get out to those in the community and elsewhere, to let them know about the service. What is it that we provide? So our new website will be a part of that new release, the transit app, as I spoke of before. Also to let everyone know in the community that we still operate a fare-free program. There is no charge for passengers who want to ride a Green Mountain Express bus, whether it's to transfer, to go to Albany or to Rutland or to Burlington. So all of those things in terms of fare-free program is accessible, and it's no cost to our residents. The other thing, immediate note that I wanted to address was we received funding from the state in regards to the recovery and job access program. And we have about 6 more months of that in terms of assessing the ridership for that program. And one of the things, and it kind of kicked off before I got here. So I am taking a closer look at that in a different way to see how did we actually market that program and who was involved in terms of the committee. So yesterday I reached out to everyone that was involved, including the state, to revisit the recovery and job access program. So hopefully by next week's meeting, we'll have a more firm foundation on how we're going to market that program to increase the ridership. The goal is to make make our residents aware that we do have this service program available for them. The other thing is really quickly is when I think in terms of deliver a travel experience to our residents, a lot of times, it's more than just, buses being on time and being well maintained. It requires a deeper understanding on how to manage the overall system performance and customer satisfaction. At the end of the day, how do we get the message? How do we provide that exceptional service? And looking at new services, a new direction, just a new way of thinking. And I've been very fortunate to collaborate not only with the other agencies and also VPTA and other transit agencies to how to enhance the service. How do we get to the residents who are in need? And that's where you all come in, because I need your help as well. I will be reaching out to Jim and others to make sure that the message is heard. My goal is to be consistent and transparent and with the service we provide, and always looking to go that extra mile. And at this point, I think if you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. Thank you so much, Jim, for your time. I think that wraps up my 15, 20 minutes. I'm looking forward to presenting next time and, with a little bit more substance. But thank you, Jim. Any questions?
Thanks, Terrence. Yeah, maybe if you can stop screen sharing, then I can see everybody at one time to get questions. Good. So if anybody has a question, I see Stephanie does. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, I don't have a question, I guess, as much as a comment that, when you talk, Mr. White, about how difficult it is to reach people, I think there are a lot of people on this call who deal with the same problem, just trying to reach people to make sure that they know about various weatherization projects, that sort of thing. So I hear you, I feel your pain. But I'm wondering if maybe part of the problem is the name of your organization. When it's called the Green Mountain Community Network, I had no idea what that meant. And community to me means all kinds of things, but it would never have crossed my mind that it had to do with transportation. And then once I saw, oh, Green Mountain Express, of course I know what that is. I've seen that. I see the brand, I see the bus, my family uses it. But so I was just wondering, has there ever been any thought about calling it the Green Mountain Community Transportation Network, or I don't know, I don't know, whatever it would be, but I'm just curious.
Well, first of all, Stephanie, thank you. There's a lot of history here. It goes by a lot of names, and I knew it. I knew it best by the term GMX, Green Mountain Community Express, when I was at Southern Vermont College. But I think you're absolutely correct. Is that a direct connection between, residents not understanding that it is a transportation service? So that's one of the things that I'm looking at too. How we communicate. Do residents know that we are a transportation agency? And I think that will be clarified in my press release a little bit. In terms of the name was founded by a long time, my predecessor. I don't know how many of you knew Donna Baker, but that was the name that was given to the organization at that time. We are looking, Stephanie, at various ways to make sure that residents are aware that not only do we provide this transportation service, but at the same time, it's available, and thank you for feeling my pain, because I tell you, the more I engage in conversation with transit professionals, as I like to call them, is that we are all challenged in a lot of ways on the state level, federal level, And just in terms of how do we navigate those services to those communities? But Stephanie, thank you. I would take that into consideration.
If I could just jump in to provide some historical context, it's interesting that you raised that, Stephanie, because when I started working with Donna Baker on this years ago, when I was working in the transportation field specifically, and the predecessor organization running this was the American Red Cross, as Terrence noticed, the first Green Mountain Express buses were painted white with red crosses on them. And I said, this is probably not a good idea. People think that you go in there and somebody's going to stick a needle in your arm and draw blood. So we've made a little bit of progress anyway on messaging what services you're providing. So, one of the questions I had, or two maybe, there, as I said, I've been involved in this going way back. And a couple things that, people have raised periodically in the past is, one, the potential for some type of a fixed route service around Manchester. And the other one is some type of periodic rural route or routes to get to the outlying communities and then connect to the fixed routes in the larger towns. And I was wondering if you or your board had given any recent thought to those things.
Excellent question, Jim. Just so you know, I did some research, and I have about a month ago, and there's a follow-up meeting going to take place. I met with the town of Manchester in terms of their transportation needs and fixed routes, and it was an engaging conversation, and they are in need of services. Now, up under, you mentioned that the organization, when it was up under the Red Cross, I remember there was it wasn't so much a fixed route, but we had a transportation hub that was centralized in Manchester. And one of the things that was brought up in my meeting is the fixed route, but also services for the elderly who needed to do shopping and get to medical appointments. And we are in process of looking at starting a transportation hub once again in Manchester with a fixed route. So there's more to come on that.
Great, thanks. I see Callie has her virtual hand up, and then Kat.
Yeah, I just was curious. I think I heard you mention that you have some electric buses in the works, and I was just wondering if you could say like when you plan to deploy those or more about that.
Well, first of all, Kelly, thank you. And one of the things is it is a work in progress. We just received the funding from the state. The buses, the electrical buses, are on order. Most likely, we probably won't see them until the beginning of 2023, just because the back order, along with GMX and other agencies who will be getting the buses. We just received all of the charging stations as a couple weeks ago. So we have Green Mountain Power who's going to do the installation of those. But this is something new for us, and also for the state to see how the electric buses will be accepted. Also with this micro transit opportunity program that's going to be coming, and quite frankly, what it's going to do is there's an assessment that's going to be done on how well is our fixed route set up in Bennington County to serve the public. So I'm interested to look at this study and to collaborate with the consultants that will be coming in. And I don't have a time frame for that, but we're really excited about the electrical buses that will be arriving because it's new for us. And that's the direction that we're all moving in.
Great, thanks.
Terrence,
Kat, I think, is next, and then Steve. Kat?
Sure, thanks. I'm also I'm on the phone as well. Terrence, thanks for the overview presentation. I really appreciate it. And I'm multitasking tonight, so I'm sorry if I missed this, but in case you didn't touch on it, is there any possibility or historical or current conversation around the network partnering with the school system for busing kids, or is that better left to separate entities? Thanks.
Well, first of all, thank you for your question. And to answer your question, yes, we are looking at all of those opportunities. And I think when it comes to the school system, Mount Anthony and other schools in the local area, we look at ways to provide services. But because our buses are state funded, we also, that once we start providing services for the school, we are looking at charter services. So there's a fine line between that. And what really got my attention in collaborating with the school is we previously had an issue where they didn't have enough bus drivers, so they had to cancel school. And then I reached out and said, no, how come we weren't notified? There are some services that we could have provided to the school and making sure students get to school, and regardless of the school bus situation. But at the same time, I was informed that based on those charter services, there were some guidelines that we had to be very careful of. But at the same time, I do have a meeting with school administrators, because in dire emergency situations, when these schools or colleges or any other organization within our community, we can service them. So I think it's just a matter of communicating and having that dialogue and having a plan in place. But I thank you for your question.
Great. Steve Bendix, I had a question, and then Wayne.
Yes, I do, Jim. I wanted to ask Mr. White whether the ARPA money would be available to his organization. I heard just now that he was state funded, but could ARPA assist with money?
It is very well possible. That's something that we're looking at as well. And I have to tell you, Steve, from my position, I am looking at all available funding that can assist us moving forward. So it's there's a lot of homework that I'm going to have to do, and the money is there. It's just we have to locate it, find it, get the support. Some of the things that I'm working on in terms of immediate funding, I'm looking at doing some fundraisers, some events for the community. We thought about having a concert for the transportation concert, which would allow families and children to ride our buses and get familiar with our buses. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at. We're also going to be asking for donation. The goal is that's all part of the 5-year plan. But there's some things I want to do immediately. And we started off by updating our website, which is a comprehensive website, very informative, user-friendly, like I said, but we're looking at all types of funding.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terrence. Let's have 2 more questions before we move on. So I've got Wayne and then Nancy. So Wayne, what's your question?
Hi, Terrence. It's pretty simple. My question is, which company did you choose for the electric buses? Who's going to provide the buses?
The electric buses will be provided by the state. The state is funding those electric buses, but we are there's a match that we have to match. So the 20% match for those buses will come strictly from GMX in terms of those buses. Other organizations that received them was TBT, and then with other two providers as well. And I believe GMT, they already have the electric buses, and they're doing fairly well. So I'm really excited about this.
Do you know the manufacturers of those buses, Terrence?
There are a couple manufacturers, and I don't have the name right off the tip of my tongue, Jim, but I can get those and send those to you if you like.
Okay, great. Thanks. Nancy.
Hi, Terrence. It's interesting to hear you. And I hope when you go to Manchester that you include some of the villages that surround Manchester, like Dorset and some of the mountain villages, in your conversations, because we talk about this quite a bit in our energy committee and our church green team meeting, trying to provide transportation for people to get to Manchester and beyond, maybe the hospitals, Bennington and Rutland. So keep us in mind, please.
Nancy, listen, you guys are always on my mind. And listen, I don't mind fighting the good fight when it's worth, and I see it as having a better life condition for our residents. Okay, at the end of the day, is how to make our community more interactive and in terms of living and having that quality of life. Just so you know, part of my plan is in the last 6 months, I have been very busy. It's a good thing. But one of the things is when I look at Bennington County, and I remember I asked Jim and Mark to draft this map. And so I can take a comprehensive look at all the towns and all the villages, all the roads that could be possibly used for fixed route or on-demand service. And my goal, Nancy, is to visit each one of those counties, to visit each one of those villages, to meet with members of the community, to try to set up town hall meetings with town managers, just to open that dialogue and engage and to get it from their perspective. I'm just a representative of an agency, but at the end of the day, it is those community members and those people who live in those residents that know exactly what they need in terms of services. And we have to figure out how to best get the service to them. So I continue to fight the good fight, Nancy, and I will continue to do that. We have a lot of work to do, Jim and I, and the rest of us, you know, but it's something that I truly believe in.
Thanks, Terrence. And yeah, to reinforce Nancy's point, we've heard loud and clear from especially Dorset and Rupert and even Winhall, which isn't in our region, but is in Bennington County, about the really serious need for transportation services between their communities, especially Manchester, but other places too. You know, given especially the elderly population in some of those towns, just the ability to stay, continue to live in their homes and their communities, but have access to services. So we would love to partner with you on working on some outreach in those towns to try to figure out what we can do. So thanks.
Absolutely, Jim. I truly look forward to that.
Great. So we not wanting to run past our time here, I think I'm going to wrap up this section and say thank you so much to Terrence, and folks know, I think Callie put the link to the Green Mountain Community Network website, or Green Mountain Express website, in the chat, so folks can get that. And look forward to working with you more, Terrence. Thank you.
Absolutely, Jim. I do as well. And listen, I'm going to have to scoot along. What I didn't tell you at the beginning, I'm also a football and basketball coach. So I'm on my way to a game right now, but what I want to leave you with this. If any of you have any questions, concerns, thoughts about transportation, please don't hesitate in reaching out to me. Or I can come to where you are. Thank you.
Thanks again. Good luck. Good luck with the
Thank
game
you very
tonight.
much.
So with that, let me welcome Chris Saunders from Senator Leahy's office, who just jumped around on my screen. There you are. Hey, Chris, thank you. And we've worked with Chris over the years, and most recently, certainly in his capacity working for the senior senator from Vermont. And of course, Senator Leahy announced recently that he's going to be retiring after decades of service to the state and the country that we're most grateful for. And so what does a staff person like Chris do when that announcement comes out? I guess he goes to work for the Northern Borders Regional Commission, but fortunately, Chris is still around and representing the senator, and is here to talk about anything he wants to, but I asked him to come and talk about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is one of the major initiatives of the Biden administration to bring a lot of long overdue infrastructure investment to the country. So Chris, thanks for making the time, and I'll just turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Jim. Really great to be here. Wish we were all in person and seeing you. As Jim mentioned, I work for the senator. This is year 20 on his team, a decade in Washington, a decade now home in Vermont. And at some point in the coming months, if the Senate agrees, as Jim noted, I'll be headed over to a regional commission, thanks to an appointment from President Biden to head up a small federal agency that hopefully will do some good work in Bennington County, thanks to the infrastructure bill. My goal was to kind of do a high level conversation of the resources that are out there. And then perhaps, I don't know how long your meeting is slated to go, but knowing that each of your communities is doing different things and has dynamic projects and interests that you all may be focused on, rather than try and cover every single federal funding opportunity that's out there, because there is a lot of federal money coming into Vermont and ready to be deployed for cool things. Just try and guide you to places where you can find out more about when resources will be available. It's a couple months now since the name has changed. We are now, I guess in the last couple of weeks, we are now calling this the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Bill. Not the most original, but it's what we're going with. Even though it's been a couple months, the agencies that are going to be deploying these funds are going to be doing so in a variety of ways. And it's still early days, frankly, in terms of rolling out federal programs. So nobody's missing the boat. There's no applications yet. You're not, at risk of saying, oh, wait, my shovel ready project is already behind the gun because we didn't get our, the notice that funding is available. So talking at a high level, and then happy to spend as much time or follow-up conversations with folks about where opportunities and connections can be made. At that high level, right, Congress provides funding to run the government and to communities in a variety of different ways. The big kind of cycles that happen, they provide money annually to run the government and pass appropriations bills to do so, just like happens in Montpelier or in your local towns. And then they look at funding initiatives over a longer period of time. They look at bills that maybe have a 5-year life cycle, things like the Farm Bill that sets farm and agriculture and food policy for the country. And then things every 5 years, they pass a highway bill. So important to think of this new law really in that 5-year window. Congress took some work that they would already be doing, a highway reauthorization, which makes funding available for transportation infrastructure, and combined that with a whole bunch of new spending, and to do this $2 trillion bill. So Vermont was already going to get a lot of money, about $1.2 billion in transportation money as part of that 5-year reauthorization. We increased that by about $800 million. So the Agency of Transportation and state government will be getting a lot of resources over the next 5 years to run programs that your commission and your communities are probably already really familiar with, surface transportation programs, different block grants that come in and distribute funding for state highways and other initiatives, funding for transit programs. A number of the programs that Terrence mentioned, the money is coming from the state of Vermont, but it originates with the federal government. So the zero emission buses, the cost, covering the cost of the fares for the last 18 months during the pandemic, those have been federal resources that come to V-Trans and then into the local communities. So there's a whole suite of programs on the transportation side that are really the meat and potatoes of things that already exist. There are going to be a whole new grouping as well, though, of competitive programs that are run at the federal level to do new and interesting things. We get into a bit of an acronym soup, but programs that try and tackle really big infrastructure ideas that don't have a dedicated funding source. A program called RAISE, R-A-I-S-E. You don't have to write all this down. I have like a 40-page document that I'm going to send Jim, and he can make available to you, because every program has an acronym and all the numbers and whatnot. It's tough to keep it all in one's head. So more info coming. But this is a program that's changed names and iterations, but think of the rail line, and it's in a previous iteration, the state of Vermont, with our help, got $20 million to invest in the rail line to upgrade all the bridges between Rutland and Hoosick on the rail line.
Wow.
That's $20 million, things like that size, that complexity, that really need a multitude of partners. There's going to be a program that reconstructs bridges or builds new bridges if communities have those needs, both kind of at the big scale, thinking, like the Interstate 89 bridge over the Connecticut River, but also the smaller scale, if you've got town bridges or community bridges that might need help. There's going to be a big bucket of money for electrical vehicle charging and fueling infrastructure if folks are thinking about green energy and green hydrogen and different types of how we're transitioning away from fossil fuels. These are both money that will come directly to the state of Vermont that the state will have to distribute, as well as competitive money that group of communities or community could go apply for. There will be more money for zero emission buses. There are a couple $2 billion for that. So if Terrence is successful, it does take a couple years for these buses to, for the money to come to the state then to decide on which bus they're going to buy. I don't know. I know Green Mountain Transit bought Proterra buses. Somebody asked that question. I don't know if they make the cutout buses that Terrence's organization has funding for, but there's a lot of evolution in electric buses that's going on, trying to figure out different models so that costs are less for communities. And I think we're going to see a lot of deployment of zero emission buses. There's also a clean school bus program. Somebody asked about school buses. There will be a competitive program through the Environmental Protection Agency to make $5 billion available for schools that want to convert their diesel buses to electric ones. That's, there's lots of stuff right there, right? We could spend hours talking about transportation stuff. So I'm going to pause. Going to move to a different bucket, I know of interest to some of your communities, which is water and wastewater. There are going to be a lot of dollars available for water and wastewater infrastructure for doing a lot of different things. This money, by and large, is going to come into Vermont to the Agency of Natural Resources and Department of Environmental Conservation. So if your communities are talking with the state and working with the agency, you're probably already well on your way to being teed up for some of these resources. One of the policy decisions that was made was that it's great that this long-term funding stream has been there, that Congress provides money each year to states to deliver to local communities, but we know that even with the help, some communities are better able to tackle these projects than others. So Congress made the decision with the money that's coming over the next 5 years to increase the amount that's available to grant to communities versus the amount that they would make available to via a loan that would have to be repaid back. So there's always kind of a blend of resources when you get an award. This is really trying to make it possible for less advantaged communities to do projects, because we know we've seen bonds around the state fail when communities have said, we don't want to take on that debt load. So, more info to come. The rules of these programs and how they're going to flow and what your community might be eligible for are still being written by the Environmental Protection Agency, and ANR and DEC are interpreting them. But if you're talking with them, you're in the right space. There's also going to be a special pot of money for addressing new contaminants that previously haven't really been the focus of these programs. So things like PFAS are definitely there's going to be a special focus of one program on how do we replace or create new water systems that address communities that have struggled with PFAS contamination and other contaminants. There is a bucket of money around culvert replacement and dam removals, specifically as it relates to improving the passage of fish swimming up rivers. I don't know if any of your towns and communities have culverts that would benefit by being replaced, that would address fish habitat and water quality, but there is a bucket of money for that. Sorry, jumping back. I have my colleague who's my expert on water and wastewater send me a couple notes. He wanted to make sure folks knew that with some of the new rules that have come into place at the state level, there should be also an opportunity to look at stormwater systems to help folks comply with the new 3-acre permit rules. These are things that DEC is going to have to get into the weeds on and figure out how they're going to apply the federal rules and make sure they work for Vermont to try and address the stormwater issues on these smaller parcels. And there should also be an opportunity through a grant program to help small village water systems, by which most Vermont communities would be eligible for. We're talking under 10,000 users, to work on detecting leaks, deploying smart meters, training for folks to better operate their water systems. This is not really been fully developed, but it's another program where Congress has said, if we're going to do this, we need to provide the bulk of the money. So it's a 90% cost share program where the feds pay 9 out of every $10 that are going into the program. So that's another bucket. The last really large bucket is around energy and different types of investments in energy systems. I think the president would say that this is really the largest federal investment ever in resiliency and climate change programs. I think that's accurate. It's both for investments at the really large scale, so at the transmission and utility level. So thinking Velco and Green Mountain Power and our kind of large utilities and our transmission providers. So there's investments to make renewables more better able to integrate into those systems. But there are also programs that come in to the state that are really designed around consumers. So I heard somebody mention weatherization previously. There will be a significant boost to the state's weatherization assistance program, things like the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant, the State Energy Program, these things that Congress already funds state governments to do are going to get this massive infusion of cash. Like if you're thinking about the dollar figures, most of the programs we're talking about, if they already exist, Congress said, let's take 5 years of funding, roll it into one, and push it out fast, and states will have time to deploy this, like back to the, you haven't missed anything yet. If you don't have a project coming online for a couple of years, that's fine. You're not going to miss an opportunity, but let's guarantee states some resources to really figure out how to deliver on these projects that we know are needed. I guess the last one I should mention, it kind of doesn't fit, or the last two, there is a EPA brownfields program. This is going to be a competitive program, eligible to state and local government. It's about a $250 billion each year for the EPA's typical brownfields program, and we know that different places in Bennington County have put those dollars to good use in recent years. The last pot, not trying to be self-serving, but the organization that I'm going to be going to help administer, the Northern Border Regional Commission, is a small economic development agency that provides grants for infrastructure and other community needs, kind of in the $250,000 to $1 million range. And we're talking everything from funding things like the Preservation Trust to work on general stores. I saw that what didn't come from NBRC, but Shaftesbury just got a Bruin grant to do some work for about $100,000. It can be anything kind of across the need that is a community infrastructure need: water, wastewater, public infrastructure of a variety of kinds. And there's about $150 million that Congress has given to this agency. Vermont gets about a quarter of it. So on top of getting $4 to $5 million a year, there will be about $30 to $40 million available to Vermont through that program. So that was a lot. I feel like I just talked at, oh yeah, somebody just popped in the chat, broadband, one of my policy areas that I should be focused on. And yes, there's absolutely broadband money in this. So a couple different pieces of broadband funding that have been moving around. Somebody mentioned the American Rescue Plan earlier. So the senator helped make sure that Vermont got this all-state minimum that ensured we're getting about $1.2 billion in American Rescue Plan dollars. $100 million of that is set aside for broadband. The state legislature has said we're going to set aside another $100 million to work with the communications union districts. And then this bill, the bipartisan infrastructure law, also through the Federal Communications Commission, is providing $100 million to the state of Vermont for broadband. So that's what's already coming, secured and coming. They are also, they got about $40 billion in this bill. They're developing new maps of where broadband is needed. And when we are talking about broadband, we're now talking about standards of 25 megabits download, 3 megabits upload. So real broadband, not 4.1 or slow speeds that Senator Leahy has on his farm in Middlesex, where you could barely, he would not be able to participate in the Zoom call if he was at home. So those maps are going to come out, and they're going to determine on a national scale where addresses do not have access to that service. And then they are going to allow, they're going to deliver via formula, once all the numbers are crunched, another grant to the state of Vermont to provide service. And I think the important piece is, this is not to just do new basic service. This is really to get at, future proofing, providing fiber service, 100 megabits down, I think 20 up, if not better, if you're using these funds. So a lot of money is coming into the state. We haven't even touched on what Consolidated Communications is getting already through the FCC to do build out. In one of my recent meetings with folks, somebody said that it was their impression that of the counties in Vermont, Bennington County was most likely to get built out with fiber completely to all addresses before any other county in the state. I don't know if that's accurate, but I think the combination of money that's coming in via Consolidated to upgrade their own network, the great work that's been done by the CUD already, your area is really well poised to take advantage of the resources and close this gap that, for the 20 years I've been working on has bewitched us all. So again, sorry, that was a whole lot. Jim, you did a great job moderating questions for Terrence. If we go with that model, does that work for you?
Happy to do that. That way I can get my questions in too. Sheila, do you have another question?
Yeah, just to be clear, I'm representative to the CUD, and both Jonathan and Callie have been working very closely with us. We're well positioned if the NTIA funding comes through.
Right.
If we're not well positioned, if that does not come through, we're back to the drawing board, having to go through the Vermont Community Broadband Board, and the one small chunk of money that they've started to put, not small, but it's really ARPA funding. It has nothing to do with the infrastructure funding.
Right.
So we're going to have to, rally again if the NTIA doesn't come through, and if we're going to still have to, with very little resources, we're going to have to get that VCBB application in if we're not certain about the NTIA. So the NTIA delay in announcing their awards is really putting us in a very difficult position right now. The other thing the actual question that I have to ask is, of the various kinds of telecom funding you've mentioned, will there be more funding that will go through likely the state and the VCBB rather than having to go through the FCC or the NTIA for CUDs? Who will we be dealing with that money, or do we even know?
I think some of it is still to be determined. My assumption would be the broadband board, because the dollars are going to come to the state from the FCC. It won't be as if the CUD needs to compete at the FCC level for them. I did skip over, I completely hear the capacity question, and this is one that we've spent a lot of time talking about and thinking about. Is lots of resources available. Who are the people that are filling out the paper applications and then monitoring the funds and making sure they're getting well spent? There is a separate pot of funds through the USDA, not to complicate things, but traditionally broadband funding had come through the entity most familiar with rural America, USDA. And after being stymied by the Vermont Telephone Company, which did not really live up to its promise of delivering broadband wirelessly with the money that they got during the Obama administration, the senator was finally able to change those USDA rules. So USDA has a couple $2 billion as well to provide in grants and loans. Again, not trying to make things more complex for folks that are trying to navigate and look where resources are available. But there will be this resources coming straight to the state, most likely through VCBB. And then there are also resources out there that through USDA. There's a whole pot as well that you'll see in this document that I send you that's going to be available for equity and access, right? We know that just because broadband's available doesn't mean people have money to pay for it. And so there's a component of these resources that's designed to replace what was the emergency broadband benefit that we created in the CARES Act, and try and make sure that money is there so people can tap into these new fiber lines.
And just one more follow-up. Is it likely that the equity and access funding might be something that could be accessed at the CUD level, as opposed to in the past, a lot of the equity has come by qualifying with a broadband provider? If you meet certain, markers in terms of poverty level. And generally that kind of program has, I think, at least in my experience with the people in my town, underutilized because of both the difficulty, or not the difficulty, but just the challenges of working with providers as opposed to somewhat, and also because of just general weariness with providers. Everybody feels they've been worked over by the providers. The last thing they want to do is deal with the providers again.
Right. The existing program certainly wasn't perfect. The way this should work is that the state of Vermont, through the Public Service Department and the Broadband Board, will develop its own equity plan of how to put these dollars to use. And so my understanding is that you or VACUDA, the CUD Association, should have a strong voice in saying, here's what we want our program to look like. And then once that program received funding, it would operate based on the plan the state of Vermont had created it with partner input.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks. Important discussion there. Any other questions from folks in the audience for Chris? I have one, of course. So I think, because of historically limited resources in the area of water and wastewater for our villages, especially, ANR's programs have tended to focus on remediation of existing environmental problems. And so many of our planning programs and our energy programs and our transportation programs rely on new infill development, growth in village centers, new development in those areas, mixed use development, none of which can happen without, expanded or new water and wastewater. So I maybe I'm just putting a bug in your ear for your next job, but prioritizing new development in those village centers is getting increasingly important, and so I hope that those grant programs really move those up in the priority list.
Right. I absolutely hear that. It's a helpful thing to be thinking about in terms of that capacity and where, there are lots of different ways these dollars can be spent. And so absolutely appreciate what you're saying. And, I know that from the couple meetings I've been on with ANR staff that they're thinking about those questions and are open to input, frankly, that if there are, I'm sure you all communicate with them, but given that they are going to be the ones administering the dollars, certainly helpful to be pushing that with both us and with the team there at the state.
Great. Other questions for Chris before we let people go have dinner? Stephanie.
Yeah, I just, this doesn't really pertain directly to Bennington County, but I am just curious, will that water and wastewater infrastructure portion, will that also focus on the huge problems with Lake Champlain?
Yes, I think the stormwater component, right, is certainly meant to think about the communities in the basin where they are having to think about what type of investments they need to make to improve water quality. There are additional resources, again, 5 years of funding coming in one chunk to the Lake Champlain Basin Program, which has resources to put to use in Vermont, New York, and Quebec on improving water quality of the lake. So I think there are a host of things that I know that the state is thinking about those systems. I mean, the governor has put this in his budget, right, about systems that have traditionally had problems doing stormwater separation, and as a result of overflow issues contributing to poor water quality. So yes, that I could, another topic that could fill a symposium on how the dollars could be used, but the short answer is yes. I just want to make one other plug. There's something that, as the chairman of appropriations, like I refer to him as Senator or Pat, you know, but like our DC team is often like, he's the chairman of appropriations. It's a big deal. He has reinstituted a process formerly known as earmarking, now called congressionally directed spending, because we needed a new euphemism and didn't like the other one. And it's really an opportunity that he's restored, because he sees that there's this space in between a community that has the access and the ability to develop a really comprehensive proposal and compete for some of these resources, and those that don't. And or there may be a focus of a federal program that Vermont community really wants to achieve, but doesn't meet the metrics, right? You know, maybe we're not serving enough people because of our population, you know, whatever the reason, like the square peg round hole thing. So he's reinstituted this process where communities present ideas, and members of Congress can then write into appropriations bills that a specific grant is going to a community for a specific purpose. And you know, example in the county is a project that he's trying to undertake in conjunction with Southwestern Vermont Medical Center, with great support from Jim and Bill and Jonathan, prioritizing childcare. And so hopefully these bills move forward and they get passed, and there will be a couple $100,000 to work on expanding access to childcare. But if your communities have comparable projects, and we're talking everything from energy resiliency and disaster preparedness to criminal justice to, you know, you kind of go across the spectrum, community facilities, food, incubator, business idea, like I could just blabber on, right? If you guys are tackling an interesting project and it hasn't fit with some of what you are hearing about, or what you know to be out for available resources, it's an opportunity that every member of the delegation has, but particularly Senator Leahy is in the coming weeks will be asking communities to send their ideas and say, you know, we need help making this project a reality. And again, I'll share those materials with Jim once we have them finalized, but he really believes that, you know, Washington should be getting these dollars back to local communities to do things that benefit residents. And I'll also send Jim my email contact. I mean, he has it, but you know, feel free to share it if anybody wants to reach out to kind of have a one-on-one conversation. That's, you know, how I'm spending most of my days is talking with communities about cool things they're trying to do and how we can make sure there are federal dollars available for them. So my last plug, but happy to stay and chat as long as people want to.
Great, thanks. Yeah, interesting times to be sure. And we'll have record of this meeting available on our website as well as we'll, you know, as information comes in on the the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we'll make sure that we get those up on a section of the website where people can easily access it too. So thank you, Chris. Are there any final questions or comments? No. Well, with that, then I guess that we are wrapped up for tonight. So thank you all very much, and we will see you again soon. Thanks.
Good night, all.
Thanks, everyone.